If you caught our most recent Design Build Delivers podcast episode advocating for design build without squeezing the life out of it, you know we have been deep in the trenches of state-level legislation. In this bonus content episode brought to you by US CAD and Archon's company, we are zooming out, way out. Because while states and municipalities continue to drive the expansion of design build, recent federal actions could still reshape the playing field across the industry. And there has been no shortage of headlines to support this. Construction Dive reports that a new executive order has rolled back policies that previously encouraged the use of project labor agreements, or PLAs, on federally funded projects. Legal experts say that while PLAs are not disappearing entirely, their use may decrease significantly. This follows a recent federal court ruling reported by Holland and Knight that found PLA mandates were unlawful on certain contracts, a decision that's already beginning to influence how some projects are structured and bid. Tariffs are also making news. Dodge Construction Network reports that new tariffs on materials like steel, aluminum, and lumber, with some rates reaching 25%, could increase input costs across the construction industry. Building Design and Construction notes these tariffs could raise development costs by as much as 10%, especially for projects that rely heavily on steel, like high-rise buildings and large infrastructure. The threat of retaliatory tariffs from key trade partners only adds to the uncertainty, impacting both supply chains and pricing. And as for labor, policy shifts around immigration enforcement are putting added pressure on an already strained workforce. Building Design and Construction reports that nearly 30% of the U.S. construction workforce is made up of immigrants, a figure that's even higher in some states. As enforcement increases, some workers are avoiding job sites out of fear, leaving firms struggling to staff projects. So what does all this mean for project delivery, risk, and timelines? And where does design build fit into the federal policy conversation? To help us wade through it, we have brought back our guests from the Squeezing the Life Out of It episode, Richard Thomas, DBIA's Director of State and Local Legislative Affairs, and Vince Campanella, Chair of DBIA's Legislative Committee and a longtime design build leader with decades of field experience. And you mentioned PLAs, which have been in the news lately, and we're not going to get into it, but it does set us up nicely for going back to a broad view of the U.S. We've been talking about state legislation, but there is still a federal level that affects the states and the states that affect the federal level, you know, the whole idea of this United States. So let's look at that relationship a bit in this segment. First, we've seen federal policies shift in areas like tariffs, immigration, and the federal workforce. How did these changes impact state-level design build authority and project execution?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I think with the tariffs, I think that remains to be seen. I think it's going to depend where in the country the project is and where materials are coming from. I think immigration, I don't see that as an issue that's going to affect us that much. Maybe I should back up a little bit, at least as far as the tariffs. I think we're going to have to wait and see. I think for some of the other things, as far as federal funding and things like that, I think that's a little bit easier. I'll leave that to Vince. What do you think? Are you
can come out of that corner now,
tariffs?
Richard.
I mean, I think the tariffs, we've been through this before. We went through this 8 years ago. And I think a lot of it's just a wait and see approach. There's obviously, when it first happens, like what's going on now, there's a knee-jerk reaction to things, and usually it settles out fairly quickly. We're a contractor. We monitor things that impact pricing, especially for projects that are out a little ways, quite heavily. And we're not seeing people running for the hills with their hair on fire right now. So I think people are kind of just waiting to see what happens over the next 30, 45 days with the tariffs. I think on the immigration side, a lot of our workers, a lot of our field workers and tradespeople are immigrants. We have a fairly robust, diverse workforce here in Washington State. There's some concern over the immigration things, but there's also very clear rules around it, work visas and things like that a lot of the workers that we have all adhere to. And so we usually don't have that much of a problem. But I think, again, people are in kind of a wait and see attitude at this point in time. You know, the PLAs, we had a bill here in Washington State that came through the legislature that they wanted to add PLAs to all K-12 school construction. That luckily, it looks like it died in the committee, so that's not going to happen. But, you know, that just puts more pressure on the budgets that we deal with. From a national association perspective, there's a large group of our membership that's non-union. So it would have put them at a disadvantage. You know, obviously something probably DBIA would not have advocated for. There's a lot to unpack with the feds. There's a lot going on at light speed right now with the feds. There's a lot of just kind of wait and see attitude going on with a lot of folks right now.
I would add in regards to the PLAs that, especially on the transportation side, I think any project that has federal funding in it, there's not going to be any PLAs. And that's something that DOTs, most projects have at least some federal funding in. That's where you're really going to see a difference.
I know we are waiting and seeing. It really hasn't been that long, but we do have this new administration and they're pretty clear about what they're focused on: efficiency, innovation, cost savings. So what opportunities do you think this could possibly open up for project delivery methods like design build?
I mean, hopefully just the success design build has on projects in general, just the time savings, the cost savings, the earlier cost certainty. From an owner's perspective, the risk shift of the design and things onto a design builder. Those should all be huge selling points to the feds for how progressive design build and design build can be more efficient, more cost avoided to deliver projects. They should be hopefully focusing some effort on expanding their use of design build in the federal sector.
That was such a neatly tied up answer. Thank you. That really is a perfect way to tie things up, and a great reminder that even with so much influx, design build is built to handle it. Big thanks to Richard and Vince for helping us unpack the latest federal shifts and what they could mean for design build teams across the country. If today's conversation raised questions, sparked ideas, or even made you shout at your phone on the train, I've been there. We want to hear from you. Just tap the link in the episode description to text the show. It's quick, it's easy, and you never know. We might feature your thoughts in a future episode. We've also included links in the show notes to the articles I mentioned today in case you want to dig deeper into tariffs, immigration, and the evolving labor landscape. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. As Vince and Richard both said, we are kind of in a wait and see phase. There's still a lot of important design build legislation moving at the state and local level, and those efforts will continue to shape how teams deliver projects across the country. At the same time, much of what's happening federally is still unfolding, and it will take time to understand the full impact. The good news? Design build is nicely poised to handle change and uncertainty. Whether it's shifting supply chains, workforce challenges, or evolving policy landscapes, design build's emphasis on collaboration, flexibility, and early risk management means project teams are better prepared to absorb and adapt, no matter what comes next. So if you're looking to strengthen your own design build readiness, DBIA has you covered. From customizable contract docs to best practices, position statements, and in-depth guides, like the Design Build Done Right Universal Best Practices, and legislative resources like the State Statute Report and Guide for Enactment of Design Build Legislation, you can find it all at store.dbia.org. And finally, if you haven't yet listened to our full-length episode advocating for design build without squeezing the life out of it, be sure to check that out. Vince and Richard focus on what's happening at the state and local level and why those efforts matter so much right now. This bonus content episode of the Design Build Delivers podcast was brought to you by USCAD and Archon's Company. Learn more at uscad.com/DBIA.